The jungle moon of Calvex 9 pulsed with life as if the very soil had a heartbeat. Vines the width of a man's chest, draped from massive tree limbs, swaying gently in windless air. Leaves shimmered with bioluminescent veins, casting a ghostly green hue across the undergrowth. Every branch, every puddle, every buzzing sound hinted at something alive, something watching. It was the kind of environment that swallowed unprepared explorers whole and left nothing behind but their blinking tracking beacons. A transport ship hummed as it landed near a wide clearing, steam hissing from beneath its chassis as it settled against the moss-covered ground. The delegation that stepped off was a patchwork of uniforms and species: long-limbed Karen scouts, crystalline Vasari analysts, and broad-shouldered Bralshara soldiers with armor embedded directly into their skin. At the center of them stood High Commander Voktal, head held high, expression unreadable, posture rigid with pride. His crest, a row of dark red bone-plated ridges along the skull, was freshly polished. Every movement he made was exact, deliberate, and filled with the silent reminder of his authority. He was followed closely by 4 security officers, all Bralshara like him, their steps synchronized and heavy. The council had sent him to lead the expedition as a symbol, proof that even the proudest military species could participate in diplomatic research. But for Voktal, this was not a mission of unity. It was a demonstration. He intended to show that the Bralshara could survive anywhere without weakness, without compromise, and most certainly without help from the humans. "Environmental integrity nominal," barked his second, a thick-armed female named Tarsa. "All terrain parameters match the predictive models." "Good," Voktal replied, stepping down onto the soft terrain. "We advance in 30. A few paces away, a small group of humans stepped out more cautiously. Leo Graves was among them, wearing a battered field vest over his breathable suit, a thick notebook strapped to his thigh, and a lunch pack slung lazily across his back. His dark curls were slightly damp from the cabin humidity, and his boots squelched faintly in the wet moss. Unlike the others, who immediately began unpacking their scanning tools and drones, Leo knelt beside a small cluster of red-leafed fungus and grinned. He pulled out a stylus and began sketching. To his left, Dr. Malloran, a Vasari exobiologist whose translucent form pulsed with shifting amber light, made a soft chime of disapproval. "You continue using paper," he observed. Leo didn't look up. "Paper doesn't glitch when the humidity fries the signal, plus it smells like the field." Voktal noticed the exchange and scoffed quietly. "Primitive habits." Leo stood and dusted his knees. "Good morning to you too, Commander." Voktal didn't respond. His gaze was already sweeping the tree line, searching for threats, or perhaps more accurately, for signs that Calvex 9 might tremble beneath his presence. His guards remained silent. Their hands rested casually near their pulse blades, and their eyes scanned every shifting leaf. The expedition's briefing had been clear. Calvex 9 was a Class 4 hostile world. Its flora was highly reactive to pressure and vibration. Its insect life was aggressive and neurotoxic. No combustion tools were allowed. Scanners had detected several biosignatures that did not match the universal database. Still, Voktal had waved off the protective layers provided by the human engineers. "I will not be trussed up like livestock," he had said before landing. "Bralshara armor is sufficient." Now, as the group began to move forward into the jungle, the team split into pairs, each with one Bralshara soldier, one researcher. Voktal, of course, walked alone at the front. Leo ended up near the rear, notebook in one hand, a sandwich tightly wrapped in the other. He had spent years on research missions like this, but he had never quite gotten used to the silence of jungle planets. They didn't behave like Earth's forests. No birds, no wind, just the constant anticipation of something about to move. "You shouldn't eat while walking," a Skoran botanist muttered to him. Leo shrugged. "If something wants me, it'll take me either way. Might as well enjoy the sandwich." The path grew tighter. Soon the team had to walk single file. Voktal paused briefly at a wide tree root, then stepped over it without hesitation. As his foot touched the moss beyond, something hissed beneath it. In the next instant, a shimmer of motion streaked out from a tangle of underbrush. A tiny insect, barely the size of a grape with wings that pulsed in unnatural iridescence, darted forward and buried its stinger into the side of his calf just beneath the armored plate. The sound that came from Voktal wasn't a scream, but it was close. He staggered backward, striking the tree trunk with his shoulder. The guards moved instantly, slicing the air with shock blades, but the creature was already gone. Voktal dropped to one knee. His face had already begun to pale, more gray than the usual bronze, and thick black veins crept up his leg. "Medical!" Tarsa shouted. Two soldiers pulled out sterile foam applicators, but Voktal slapped one aside. "No human tech!" he gasped. "Bralshara protocol!" The foam hissed uselessly on the ground. The swelling spread upward, now past his thigh. His breathing shortened. "Apply the counter serum," one soldier said. "I don't recognize the venom," said another. "It's not in the archives. The protein pattern is unknown." "Then scan it," Tarsa barked. "Systems are blind. The atmosphere's blocking our relay uplink. No diagnostic feedback." The panic rippled outward in quiet waves. Bralshara never showed fear, but the tension in their shoulders was unmistakable. Tarsa turned toward the human delegation, then immediately looked away. Leo, watching from the side, dropped the last bite of his sandwich and stepped forward. "Someone give me a knife," he said. Voktal growled. "Do not approach me." Leo ignored him. "It's not going to kill you," he said calmly. "But if that swelling reaches your hip joint, you'll lose motor function in the spine. You'll be paralyzed by nightfall." Tarsa reached for her blade, hesitated, then tossed it to Leo. "If this fails, you die," she said flatly. Leo caught the blade, crouched beside his pack, and unwrapped a pale green onion from a wax cloth. He sliced it open in one clean stroke and pressed the raw half to the bite. The smell wafted sharply into the air, sulfuric, earthy, pungent. "What are you doing?" Voktal spat. His breath came in sharp gasps now. "Drawing out the inflammation," Leo said. "Onions got sulfur compounds that bind to protein-based venom. Same trick used on Earth when old hunters got stung by wasps with alkaline toxins. Different biochemistry, similar reaction." The swelling began to slow. Leo replaced the onion with a fresh slice and pressed it gently, massaging the pulp into the tissue. Everyone was watching now. The Bralshara stood motionless. Malloran tilted his glowing head with quiet fascination. The guards lowered their weapons. Within 3 minutes, the vein discoloration stopped spreading. Voktal stared at his own leg, then at Leo. "What else is in that lunchbox of yours?" Leo grinned. "Depends what I'm craving." The bite wound was still red and angry-looking, but the swelling had stopped. The black veins that had crawled up Voktal's leg had receded into dull blue lines that now rested harmlessly under the skin. He stood slowly, wincing only slightly as he tested his balance. The pain had not vanished entirely, but it had loosened its grip on his muscles. His pride, however, remained knotted. He did not thank Leo. He didn't even look at him. Instead, he faced the jungle path ahead with narrowed eyes, as if daring the planet to strike again. Leo packed away what remained of the onion, wrapped it in fresh cloth, and returned it to his lunch pouch. The knife, still stained with juice, he wiped clean with a piece of bark. He said nothing, but his movements were methodical, unhurried. He had no need to gloat. The guards remained tense. Tarsa gave Voktal a questioning glance, silently requesting an order. Voktal waved her off and motioned to continue forward. His limp was noticeable now, but he refused any support. The Bralshara followed without speaking. Leo fell back into the group's middle ranks, walking beside Malloran. The Vasari's crystalline torso glowed a curious shade of yellow, a tone Leo had learned to interpret as analytical interest. "You understood the insect's venom by instinct," Malloran said. His voice was melodic and precise, like wind chimes tuned to speech. "I didn't understand it," Leo replied. "I gambled based on Earth analogs. It was either going to bind with sulfur or explode in my face." "You used a vegetable as an anti-inflammatory agent in front of the most powerful military figure on this mission," Malloran said. Leo shrugged. "He's alive." The jungle deepened around them as the group continued forward. The trees grew thicker, their roots rising from the ground in tangles. Moisture dripped constantly from overhead branches, and the air grew heavier, dense with the smell of moss and the metallic taste of plant pollen. At irregular intervals, small creatures skittered across the path, long-legged reptiles with glassy skin and tongues that flickered like lightning. The team ignored them. None made a sound. Even the Bralshara moved with heavy caution now. At midday, they reached a shallow basin flanked by thick walls of glowing fungus. The scouts signaled the all clear, and the group stopped for a short break. The humans set down light field packs and began calibrating atmospheric samplers. The Bralshara formed a wide perimeter, weapons drawn but idle. Leo found a flat rock and sat down. His boots were soaked. His socks were beginning to feel like damp sponges. He reached into his lunch pouch, pulled out a foil-wrapped protein square, and bit into it with a tired sigh. His jaw ached, the air was too thick to breathe easily, and the pollen was beginning to irritate his eyes. Tarsa approached him, her armor joints clicking faintly. "You have field medical training?" she asked. He looked up. "Not officially. Grew up with a botanist mother and a stubborn immune system. When you spend your teens on jungle planets, you learn to fix yourself when the real doctors are a shuttle ride away. You put hands on a superior officer without clearance. I also kept him from dying of convulsions in a vine pit," he replied. "So I figure we're even." She stared at him for a moment. Her expression gave away nothing. Then she leaned in slightly and said, "That creature was not in our data bank." "Yeah, I figured. The venom bypassed 3 Bralshara antitoxin filters." Leo tore another bite from the protein square. "Those filters are great against known poisons, the ones someone already studied, cataloged, sequenced, and cured. But the wild doesn't care what your lab prepared for. It's new every minute." She watched him chew, then nodded once. He will not admit it, but he was close to shutdown. Leo tossed the wrapper into a burn bag. He doesn't need to admit it. His circulatory system did all the talking. She stepped back without another word and returned to the perimeter. Malloran sat beside Leo then, his crystalline frame emitting a low vibration. "Your kind is underrepresented on Calvex expeditions," he said. "Now I wonder if that has been a strategic mistake." Leo leaned back on the rock. "Humans aren't flashy. Our tech isn't the sleekest and our suits aren't the most resistant, but we survive. That's our thing." "You gamble," Malloran said. "You adapt. You apply illogical solutions to unknowns, and often succeed." Leo smiled. "It's called stubborn luck." Before Malloran could respond, a sharp whistle rang out from the scouts. Something moved in the trees above, large, silent, and too fast to track with the eye. The team froze. Tarsa raised her rifle. Voktal, still limping slightly, signaled everyone to stay low. Above them, a wide-bodied insect with translucent wings hovered between branches. Its abdomen glowed pale blue and its legs flexed like wire springs. It did not attack. It only watched. Leo squinted. "That's the same pattern as the one that bit him," he whispered. "Same body shape. Different color. Maybe a variant." "Do not provoke it," Tarsa growled. Leo reached slowly into his pouch and retrieved a clear plastic container, then pulled a dried fruit slice from within. He tossed it onto the mossy ground beneath the insect. The creature flared its wings, then descended gently, touching down near the fruit. It began to feed. Malloran tilted his head. "What did you do?" "I distracted it," Leo said. "Sulfur in the fruit. Might be drawn to it." "Or repelled," Malloran countered. Leo shrugged. "Guess we'll find out." The creature finished, then ascended once more, spiraling into the canopy and vanishing from view. Voktal lowered his weapon slowly. His face, though still stoic, bore the faint lines of calculation. He walked past Leo without a word but paused a few meters ahead. His voice came back over his shoulder. "You're not what I expected." Leo stood up. "Neither was your leg turning purple." Voktal did not reply. He resumed walking. The expedition pressed forward, entering a region marked by thorn-covered trees that bled amber sap when scratched. Every member of the team kept one eye on the shadows, the other on the path. The insect had not returned, but the jungle was never empty. Voktal walked at the front again, though his stride was more measured now, and his armor panel near the wound had been discreetly adjusted for ventilation. Leo found himself walking beside Tarsa again. She didn't speak this time. She only studied him from the corner of her eye, her expression unreadable. And though she would never admit it, she had placed a small container of sliced onion in her medkit pouch, just in case. By the time the expedition reached the second survey site, the sun of Calvex 9 had dropped beneath the upper canopy, casting a pale lavender glow across the jungle floor. The thick air had cooled, but not by much, and the team moved slower now, worn not by distance but by tension. Since the insect encounter, silence had wrapped itself tightly around the group like a second skin. No one dared speak of what had happened. Not the venom, not the cure, and certainly not the onion. The site was located at the edge of a mineral pit, a natural depression lined with blue-white crystals known for their ability to disrupt scanning equipment. The pit itself was surrounded by low brush and strange fan-like plants that pulsed slightly when touched. It was a place avoided by local wildlife, which made it ideal for setting up a secure camp. Voktal stood near the perimeter, arms crossed, gaze sharp. His leg no longer showed signs of weakness, but his movements had changed. Where before he walked with deliberate dominance, now he moved with cautious calculation. He checked his surroundings more frequently, spent longer reviewing sensor data, and no longer refused water when it was offered. He hadn't spoken to Leo since that brief comment during the insect standoff. But his silence held something new. Not disdain, but deliberation. Tarsa issued orders for camp setup. The Bralshara erected perimeter shields and climate stabilizers while the human and Vasari scientists unpacked sampling kits and communication towers. Leo dropped his bag beside a short pillar of obsidian-colored stone and sat down. He pulled his boots off, emptying sand and a few needle-like burrs from within. His feet were blistered, and his shoulders ached from hours of walking in gear never designed for such humidity. He drank half his water bottle in one go. "Your nutritional habits are inefficient," Malloran observed from behind a glowing field terminal. Leo gave him a tired look. "So is hiking across a poison planet with a med kit full of useless nanogels. I think we're all improvising at this point." Malloran's chest pulsed blue, a Vasari signal for reluctant agreement. Tarsa approached moments later, her expression unreadable. She held out a tablet-like device with one hand. "The commander wants a full report on the insect encounter," she said, "including methodology." Leo raised an eyebrow. "He wants to know how I cured him?" "He wants it on record. Full transcript. No omissions." Leo wiped his hands on his trousers and took the device. "Let me guess. Official council documentation. Research evaluation. Probably a threat assessment in there, too." "Just write it," she said, then added after a pause, "He wouldn't ask if it weren't serious." Leo stared at her for a moment, then began typing. By nightfall, the jungle had shifted again. The warmth remained, but a cold breeze threaded through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of something metallic. The plant life outside the camp walls had grown quieter, and the glowing fan plants had curled inward. A warning sign. Voktal called an all-hands assembly near the main terminal. His voice was sharper than usual, his tone laced with unspoken urgency. "We are no longer on a passive survey," he said. "Something in this region is observing us. Multiple drones have failed to return, and all long-range comms remain jammed." The humans exchanged glances. Leo felt a ripple of unease in his chest, but he said nothing. "I want all non-essential personnel to remain within the perimeter. Tarsa, Malloran, and Graves will accompany me to retrieve the missing drones." Leo blinked. "Wait, me?" "You are now our most experienced organic response analyst," Voktal said deadpan. Malloran tilted his head. "That is a diplomatic way of saying plant nerd." Leo stood up and clipped his gear to his belt. "All right. Let's see what else wants a bite out of your leg." They left the camp in a staggered diamond formation, Voktal at the point, Malloran scanning with a handheld sensor, Leo watching the terrain, and Tarsa covering the rear with her rifle drawn. The jungle beyond the pit was darker now, the trees taller and the ground softer. At one point, Leo's foot sank into something that squelched. He didn't ask what it was. "Why aren't we sending a drone?" he muttered. "Because they've all stopped responding," Tarsa replied. "Right. Obvious question." 15 minutes in, they found the first drone, embedded in the side of a tree, scorched and crumpled like a crushed can. Leo examined it while Malloran scanned the surroundings. "No heat signature, no impact crater," Leo said. "It didn't fall. It was dragged." "Whatever did this left no tracks," Malloran added. Voktal stepped forward, eyes scanning the branches above. "We continue." The second drone was harder to find. Its remains were scattered in pieces across a small clearing. One of its cameras had been melted, and its signal dish had been peeled open like a flower. The plants nearby were singed. Something had burned its way through. Leo crouched beside one of the blackened ferns. He picked up a charred fragment and sniffed it. Ozone, something high frequency, plasma maybe. Tarsa looked around sharply. No indigenous fauna in our logs uses directed energy, not at this scale. Maybe it's not fauna, Leo said. Maybe it's flora. Before Voktal could reply, Malloran raised a hand. Something's approaching, he said. Fast, multiple signatures. Tarsa raised her rifle. Defensive formation. The underbrush exploded in motion. Figures lunged forward, bipedal, insectoid, their bodies lined with jagged shells and flickering bioluminescence. They moved like shadows wearing armor, silent except for the hiss of their limbs slicing the air. There were 5 of them. Voktal drew his blade and moved first. He struck the nearest creature with brutal precision, slicing through its joint before it collapsed with a screech. Tarsa opened fire, her rifle bursts lighting up the trees. Malloran activated a shield pulse, and Leo dove behind a tree trunk, pulling his sample knife free. One of the creatures veered toward him. Its eyes glowed amber. It leapt, claws outstretched. Leo waited until the last second, then threw a handful of powdered mineral dust into its face. The fine grit blinded it long enough for him to drive his knife between its mandibles. The fight lasted less than a minute. All 5 creatures fell, twitching and bleeding strange silver ichor into the moss. Voktal stood over the last body, breathing hard, blade dripping. He turned to Leo. "You're injured." Leo looked down. Blood leaked from a shallow slash on his shoulder. He hadn't felt it during the chaos. Tarsa moved quickly, pulling a patch from her kit. But instead of the usual med foam, she reached into her own side pouch and pulled out a strip of crushed onion, pressing it gently to the wound. Leo raised an eyebrow. She didn't look at him. "If it works, I use it." Voktal stared at the bodies, then the tree line. "We're leaving, now!" As they moved back toward the camp, faster this time, no one spoke. But the silence had changed. For the first time, it wasn't just the jungle watching Leo. It was the commander, the guards, even the scientist with the glowing chest. And deep in that jungle, the creatures didn't rot like normal predators. They dissolved, as if the planet had decided to erase its mistake. The bodies were gone by the time the team returned to the mineral pit. Not moved, gone. No blood, no broken shell fragments, not even crushed grass where they had fallen. It was as if the jungle had breathed in and swallowed the evidence. The only trace of what had happened was the silver smear on the edge of Leo's boot and the sting still pulsing in his shoulder. The camp lights flickered as the perimeter systems struggled to adapt to the rising humidity. Night on Calvex 9 came faster than it did on Earth, rushing in with winds that smelled like iron and leaves that whispered in frequencies too low for most ears to detect. The camp's command tent hummed with the quiet clatter of equipment and clipped voices. Inside, Voktal stood over a digital table displaying topography scans riddled with anomalies. The glowing lines shifted constantly as the jungle's electrical interference distorted the data. He stared without blinking. Leo sat on a medical cot, his shirt half open, the onion-soaked dressing taped to his skin with surgical strips. A medic fussed over his vitals, but Leo kept one eye on the tent entrance where Tarsa stood posted like a statue. Malloran paced nearby, unusually agitated. The soft blue light in his chest pulsed erratically. "What we encountered were not random creatures," he said. "They coordinated. They struck with awareness. This planet has intelligence, perhaps even sentience." Voktal said nothing. Tarsa finally spoke. "The fact that we survived does not erase what happened. It escalated. The drones were warnings." Leo winced as the medic tightened the bandage. "So now what? We pack up and leave? Or wait until the jungle decides to try again?" "No," Voktal said. His voice cut through the room like a blade. "We finish what we started. But we adapt. No more arrogance." That word, arrogance, hung in the air heavier than any mist. It was not in the Bralshara vocabulary unless invoked as accusation or shame. Voktal turned to Leo. "Your actions have shifted this mission. I won't pretend otherwise, but that doesn't make you untouchable." Leo leaned back on his palms. Not asking to be. I'm asking to be useful. This place listens and we keep shouting. Maybe it's time, someone whispered back. Tarsa glanced at Voktal, then nodded once. The next morning, the Council's long-range communication relay finally pierced the atmosphere. A secured message burst through the encrypted channel and appeared on Voktal's terminal. He read it silently while the rest of the team prepared for the day's deployment. The message was short. Proceed with caution. Bral Shara Command questions reliability of human remedy. Request full data and chain of evidence. Possible violation of medical protocols. Authority remains with Commander. Observation units en route. Voktal closed the file and stood motionless for several minutes. Then he summoned Tarsa and handed her the message. She read it. Her jaw tightened. They're calling it a violation, she said quietly. They're calling it unpredictable, he corrected. Leo was summoned to a debrief chamber shortly after. It was a small dome built into the edge of the pit, used for environmental study sessions, now turned into an interrogation room with nothing but a chair, a screen, and an audio recorder. Voktal sat across from him. No one is accusing you, Voktal began, but the Council wants clarity. Leo crossed his arms. They want a scapegoat in case something primitive works better than something approved. They want to know if your cure created unforeseen consequences. Leo laughed bitterly. I rubbed an onion on your leg, Commander, not a cursed relic. But it worked, Voktal said, and that is what terrifies them. Leo stood up. You should be proud of that. Voktal's eyes narrowed. Pride is for the dead. I need to understand what you understand. The plant you used, the effect. It is more than coincidence. Leo nodded. Everything here speaks the language of chemistry. You think these creatures are random mutations? No. They react to changes in the local ecosystem, sound, movement, electrical discharge, but also to scent, to sulfur. I think this planet doesn't just punish invaders, it tests them. And when something passes, it stops attacking. You believe the onion passed the test? I believe the planet understood it, or respected it. Either way, it stopped trying to kill you afterward, didn't it? Voktal didn't answer. Instead, he stood and left the dome. Later that afternoon, the observation units arrived, 2 scouts from the Council, clad in gleaming white armor, escorted by drones that hovered like wasps. They landed silently just beyond the camp's edge. Their insignia bore the triple chevron of medical enforcement, not military. And their eyes behind polished visors made no effort to hide their intent. They approached Leo first. You introduced unauthorized Earth-based material into a first-contact biohazard situation, the lead observer said. His voice was flat and synthetic. Leo folded his arms. And saved a commander's life. Unverified. Temporary relief is not equivalent to recovery. You may have masked symptoms. You may have corrupted natural responses. You may have invited ecological backlash. Leo glanced at Voktal, who stood a few meters away, listening silently. I didn't ask for permission, Leo said. I acted, and it worked. The observer lifted a scanner and ran it across Leo's chest. Your wound remains inflamed. We'll extract tissue samples. You're not putting me on a ship. That's not your decision. Voktal stepped forward. It is mine. The observer turned. Commander, this is a matter of protocol. This is a matter of command, Voktal said coldly, and this man is under my protection. The tension crackled between them like an unspoken storm. The observers retreated to their mobile lab without another word. That night, Leo sat outside his tent with a small lantern casting amber light across the grass. He didn't sleep. None of them did. The jungle had gone silent again. Not the peaceful silence of rest, but the coiled silence of restraint. Tarsa walked over and sat beside him. She held something in her hand. A preserved segment of the insect that had first attacked Voktal. It was sealed in a reinforced vial, half submerged in gel. We found this beneath one of the mineral shelves, she said. Buried, like it was planted. Leo turned the vial in his hand. You think it was waiting? I think this world knows who doesn't belong. He set the vial on the ground between them. Maybe the trick isn't proving we're strong enough. Maybe it's proving we're listening. From the command tent, Voktal watched through the clear wall. His leg throbbed, not from pain, but from memory. He touched the spot where the wound had been. The skin was smooth now, the color normal. But something lingered just beneath the surface, something not entirely his, and he wasn't sure if it was the planet that had changed or him. The rain started at dawn, thin and bitter like the planet had changed its mind about holding back. It tapped softly on the metallic roofs of the field domes and slid in slow streams down the perimeter barriers. Calvex 9 rarely gave warnings, but this felt like a ritual, as if the world itself had sensed the moment arriving. Leo stood near the north ridge, his back to the camp. The jungle opened before him in dense rows of green, the horizon veiled in steam. He held a sealed vial in one hand, the insect fragment preserved in gel. His thumb pressed gently against the cap, not to open it, just to feel its shape. The quiet around him was unnatural, like the trees were leaning in to listen. Behind him, boots crunched the wet moss. Voktal approached without speaking, pausing just a meter behind. For several long seconds, neither said anything. Then Voktal asked, "What do you feel?" Leo kept his eyes on the trees. "Pressure, curiosity, a test coming." Voktal stepped beside him. "You believe the planet itself is aware. I believe it's watching how we respond. It doesn't punish without reason. It provokes to measure reaction." Voktal looked down at the vial. "Then what are you going to do with that?" Leo turned the vial slowly, letting the insect fragment catch the low light. "I'm going to give it back." He walked forward into the tree line, careful not to snap branches or stir the earth too harshly. When he found a shallow root basin beneath a pale blue fern, he knelt and placed the vial gently on the soil. No ceremony, no dramatic gesture, just return. When he stood again, the breeze shifted. A low vibration passed through the ground. Voktal tensed, but Leo raised one hand. "It's not anger." Across the camp, alarms flared. The two observers rushed from their dome, voices sharp, instruments raised, readings spiked. Energy surged. A beam of light, white and clean, split the canopy above the pit and reached down, not as a weapon, but as a column of awareness. The jungle around it began to shimmer, pulsing in sync with the beam, and the fan plants that had remained sealed for days now bloomed in perfect circles. Malloran emerged from the command center, already analyzing the frequencies. "This is communication," he said aloud. "We're not under attack. It's acknowledgement." The council observers began transmitting emergency reports, but their systems glitched. The jungle's electromagnetic field surged and suppressed the signals, forcing them to watch, powerless, as the world rewrote the rules. Leo stepped forward, drawn not by force but by invitation. Inside the beam, the air was cool, not cold, refreshing. He stood at its center, and for a second he felt weightless. His thoughts slowed. He sensed something vast above him, not a voice but a presence, immense and distant yet focused entirely on him. It did not speak in words. It didn't have to. It showed him images of other visitors from other worlds, some who conquered, some who ran, others who burned themselves out in panic. None stayed long. None tried to learn. He saw the onion, the simple action, the hesitation before rubbing it on the wound, the calm despite danger. He saw the jungle watching, not judging, waiting. Then he saw the others, Voktal standing without fear, Malloran mapping patterns instead of destroying them, even Tarsa pressing onion to flesh out of quiet respect. The presence receded, the beam vanished, and the pit went still. Leo stumbled back, chest heaving, not from exhaustion but awe. The trees swayed once, and then stilled again. The jungle had seen enough. By evening, the camp's long-range communication dish reactivated without interference. Signals flowed freely. The observers received a message from Central Medical Command, demanding a full extraction and containment. Voktal denied the order. He stood before the live relay feed, the council insignia flickering above the projector, and said with crisp clarity, "The Bralshara submit a revision. Calvex 9 is not hostile, it is selective. It reacts to intention, not intrusion, and a human taught us that." The council delegates pushed back, citing risk and unpredictability. Voktal leaned forward. "We are soldiers who pretend to be scientists. This human was a scientist who acted like a soldier when it mattered, and he succeeded where our best technology failed. If you want to learn what this planet is, send more of him, or send none of us." The feed cut out. No one in the camp objected. 2 days later, the expedition concluded. A final sweep showed no additional threats, no further aggression. The jungle remained alert but passive. The strange creatures did not return. The insect species, once unidentifiable, now appeared in pockets, never striking, never watching, as if the world had reached a decision. Before departure, Leo placed a sealed capsule beneath the fern basin. Inside it was a strip of onion, dried and preserved, a peace offering, or maybe a message in a language only the soil would understand. When the team returned to the orbital station, the council launched an inquiry, but the tone had changed. The footage had gone public. The story had spread. A Bralshara commander wounded by an unknown toxin. A human field biologist using a vegetable to counteract it. An alien planet that listened. Weeks later, Leo stood in front of the Grand Assembly, not as a defendant but as a witness. The questioning was sharp, but no longer hostile. Scientists demanded chemical breakdowns. Diplomats asked about the psychology of silence. Cultural attachés speculated on planetary consciousness. And then the council archivist, a woman older than most moons Leo had visited, leaned forward and asked simply, "Why did you think it would work?" Leo smiled. "Because it once worked on my brother when he got stung by a wasp." The room went quiet. Then she nodded. Sometimes knowledge isn't in databases, it's passed through kitchens. The final decision was unanimous. A new directive was added to the Galactic Medical Field Handbook, Section 9, Subsection 2. In any unexplored biome with variable response conditions, the deployment team must include one Earth-born field biologist with ethnobotanical background and independent judgment authority. And beneath that clause, in smaller text, see Graves Protocol Calvex 9, related term onion method. In the academy, students laughed at first, but they memorized